The Battle of Manila Bay, fought on May 1, 1898, was a pivotal naval engagement during the Spanish-American War and marked the beginning of the end for Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines. Tensions between the United States and Spain had escalated over Spain's harsh treatment of Cuban revolutionaries, and the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor in February 1898 acted as a catalyst for war. Anticipating hostilities, the U.S. Navy had dispatched Commodore George Dewey and the Asiatic Squadron, stationed in Hong Kong, to move toward the Philippines in case war was declared. When war officially broke out in late April, Dewey wasted no time and set course for Manila Bay, the heart of Spanish naval power in the Pacific. The Spanish fleet, commanded by Rear Admiral Patricio Montojo, was stationed at Cavite and was comprised of aging and poorly maintained vessels, such as the Reina Cristina, Castilla, and Don Antonio de Ulloa. Many of these ships were wooden-hulled, had limited armor, and were undermanned, undersupplied, and unfit for prolonged combat. In contrast, Dewey's squadron was modern, well-trained, and equipped with steel warships like the flagship USS Olympia, as well as the Baltimore, Raleigh, Boston, Concord, and several support vessels. Dewey's fleet entered Manila Bay stealthily under the cover of night on April 30, successfully bypassing Spanish coastal defenses such as the batteries on Corregidor Island and El Fraile without being detected. At dawn on May 1, Dewey approached the anchored Spanish fleet. At around 5:40 a.m., Dewey issued his now legendary order to Captain Charles Gridley aboard the Olympia: "You may fire when you are ready, Gridley." The American squadron began a methodical bombardment of the Spanish line while performing a series of deliberate passes in front of the enemy fleet. Despite the Spanish firing back with courage and determination, their outdated guns, lack of training, and inferior equipment left them at a severe disadvantage. The Spanish flagship Reina Cristina attempted to charge the American line but was quickly set ablaze and heavily damaged by concentrated American fire. Montojo eventually ordered it scuttle to avoid capture. The Castilla caught fire and sank slowly, while other vessels such as the Don Juan de Austria and Don Antonio de Ulloa were also heavily damaged, sunk, or abandoned. After about 2 hours of intense fighting, Dewey briefly ceased fire to allow his men to rest and reassess the situation, then resumed the attack to finish off any remaining resistance. By late morning, the entire Spanish fleet had been destroyed or rendered inoperable. American casualties were astonishingly low, only one fatality, caused by heatstroke, and several wounded. In contrast, the Spanish suffered over 370 killed or wounded and total material loss. The Spanish shore batteries had little effect on the outcome and were later neutralized or bypassed. Dewey, now a national hero, had achieved a complete victory without the loss of a single American ship. However, despite the overwhelming success, Dewey lacked sufficient ground forces to take control of Manila itself and had to wait for the arrival of U.S. Army troops, which would come later that summer. The battle not only signaled the end of Spain's naval presence in the Pacific but also had far-reaching consequences. It opened the door for the United States to occupy the Philippines, leading to the eventual surrender of Manila in August 1898 and the signing of the Treaty of Paris in December, by which Spain ceded the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico to the United States. This marked a significant moment in the rise of American imperialism and the country's transformation into a global power. However, it also sowed the seeds of conflict with Filipino nationalists who had been fighting Spanish rule and expected independence. Their hopes were dashed as the U.S. established control over the islands, leading to the outbreak of the Philippine-American War in 1899. Thus, the Battle of Manila Bay was not only a brilliant tactical victory but also the beginning of a complex and often controversial chapter in both American and Filipino history.